Ever since hearing John Bonham on that very first Led Zeppelin track, When the Levee Breaks, I was blown away by his drumming. I described it as a force of nature on that very first listen. And I think it was a fantastic introduction to his style, which I just think is absolute power. He's able to do a lot of subtle things and technically brilliant things, but I think what separates him from other drummers is that his presence is felt. When he's on a track, you know it because of the power he gets out of his instrument. And this right here is a video that goes into detail about John Bonham's fantastic drumming style. It's done by Polyphonic. Hopefully this will be educational to me and maybe entertaining to you guys too. Hope you guys enjoy. Here we go. This is what makes John Bonham such a good drummer from the channel Polyphonic. I'll put the original video in the description down below if you want to check it out. Here we go.
Led Zeppelin stormed onto the music scene in 1968. Their raucous take on rock and roll redefined the genre and made them the biggest band on earth for the better part of a decade. Though every member of the band was musically gifted, there was one who laid down a rock-solid foundation for the group to grow on.
What a great way to describe the band. The raucous take on rock and roll. I feel like that's quite fitting because I think what they did was essentially take a foundational element of the blues to be the basis for the band, and then they twisted it, turned it, made it supersonic, colorful. They took it into all these different places, and then you have what they essentially created, which is like this, as he's saying, a raucous form of real rock and roll, hard rock.
Ask anyone in the band where their powerful sound came from, and they'd all give you the same answer. Drummer John Bonham. Let's take a look at what made Bonzo such a force behind a drum kit.
Force of nature, maybe? It's a great video, by the way. Very well edited. Good times, bad times.
What you just heard is the intro to Good Times, Bad Times, the opening track to Led Zeppelin's debut album. For most of the world, this song was their introduction to John Bonham, and from the first listen, his style was evident.
Yeah, true.
Listen to the bass drum.
I think the entire band's style was put on show on that, and talk about a fantastic introduction to a band, to opening up with Good Times, Bad Times, which is, I think, everything that Led Zeppelin is almost musically is there on show on their very first track.
Instead of playing the bass clean on every beat, Bonham accents the beat with triplets, which spices up the rhythm. A triplet is a grouping of 3 notes played within the length usually assigned to 1. Let's give it a listen.
Whoa!
See how he...
Okay, so for those of you guys who watch, or maybe have heard me say this, that I've got like a very rudimentary, very like basic level of drumming that I took for, you know, a lot of my US viewers. I guess I'd call it high school. I took music just as a joke. I just wrote it down on the paper, and the music teacher liked me so much, he like basically rearranged everything so that I could be part of his class. Regardless, I took music for like 2 years, and I drummed, and I enjoyed it a whole lot. But what I loved about it was more so the technical aspect of it, or even like the theory behind it, more than being able to play it. That is insane. That sound is getting out. That the speed at which he's playing that bass drum. I mean, I was always a 4 on the floor, but, and he's doing 3 hits when I would be able to do 1. I mean, I just don't understand how you'd be so coordinated.
He adds flair to the drum beat by breaking up the rhythm with these triplets. This kind of groove isn't new, mind you. Bonham was heavily influenced by jazz musicians like Gene Krupa and Buddy Rich. It's just that not many drummers had applied this to a rock context until Bonham came along.
Wow.
Let's give a listen to Satisfaction by the Rolling Stones. This track was released in 1964, 4 years before Zeppelin hit the scene.
Very simple. I could have possibly played that.
Hear how this drum beat is tight and on top of the beat, giving the song a kind of steady urgency. Now let's compare that to a John Bonham beat. Check out Heartbreaker.
Oh yeah. It's completely like off.
Notice how Bonham plays around with his bass drum, throwing in little accents
Yeah.
and just changing the flow of the bar. It's this kind of laid-back rhythm that really helps the band gel with each other and get into a particular kind of groove. Bonham got the idea for these syncopated grooves by listening to a lot of funk music, especially James Brown.
Okay, so it's awesome to see the influences and hear the influences. So they took from jazz music, they took from blues music, he's taken from soul music from James Brown, and then he puts a twist on it and he adds himself, of course, and then you come up with something new. And I think that's the basis for so much music, and it's beautiful to see it. The idea that he took something that already existed and then maybe added a new element and then it almost creates a new color. It's quite wild to me, you know, and no one else was thinking of it at the time. It goes to show how important your influences are, how they can affect you and create a whole new style. Because, you know, the idea of triplets, like the guy was saying, is very common in jazz music. I even know that. But the idea, no one in rock had thought of it yet. It was very basic, you know, what Charlie, I think his name is Charlie Watts, was doing for Satisfaction. Really cool, man.
This kind of drumming is impressive enough on its own, but to truly appreciate John Bonham's greatness, we need to look at the way that he worked with his band. Ron
guitar,
Nevison
I
was an
think.
engineer who worked on several Zeppelin albums. He said that part of what made the band work so well was the way that Bonzo played along with guitarist
Yes.
Jimmy Page.
Yes, very true.
The essence to me of the whole Zeppelin thing was John Bonham following the guitar. He would take the riff and he would make that his drum part.
Dude, I've been okay, I'm not no musical genius, you know, but I've been saying this for ages. I love how in sync his drumming is with the guitar part. It's always matching. It's like they'll do a call and response or they'll literally be imitation. He'll match it perfectly, which I think was rare for the time. It's definitely quite a unique style.
Instead of just doing it 4/4 and getting with the bass player, he got in with the guitar player. Getting in with the guitar riff helps tighten up and energize Led Zeppelin's sound. Listen for it here in the Immigrant Song. And here it is again in the Wonton Song, this time a little more complicated.
Oh, wow. Dude, what is this song?
And we'll give you one more example with When the Levee Breaks. Listen to how Bonham stays tight with Page even when the song changes its phrasing.
Right, it's like this. It comes in waves when he does it like that.
Did you hear it? This kind of chemistry between the band becomes especially important when they move towards more complex pieces of music. Let's look at Kashmir, for example, one of the band's most iconic songs. So the drum beat of this song is in 4/4 time, meaning that there are 4 beats to a bar and a quarter note is worth 1 beat. 4/4 time is a pretty standard time signature used in a lot of music, especially rock. However, on top of Bonham's steady 4/4 time, the string and guitar are playing in a 3/4 feel, meaning that there's only 3 beats to each phrase. As a
What?
result, the drum and string phrases only sync up on the strong beat once every 12 beats. Let's give it a listen.
That is unbelievable. I'll back it up so we catch the beginning of that, but that's ridiculous. That is like kind of the mathematics behind it. You know, it brings up that track Lateralis, I think it was called, by Tool. The Fibonacci sequence was used to make that song. And like the sequencing and the mathematics that help to create music. I've heard that quote before, actually, that music is just basically all math, but arranged beautifully. Oh, interesting. Dang, it just
By
switched up.
mixing the
Wow.
time signatures, Zeppelin add a kind of tension to the song, and it really meshes well with the intense feeling of the escalating strings. In order to do these kind of time signature tricks, the band needs to be rock solid with their rhythm, which comes from Bonham. With a less steady drummer, this breakdown could have easily fallen into chaos. So let's look at one more drum piece. Fool in the Rain is hands down my favorite Bonham beat, and it's absolutely incredible. There's a lot going on in this beat, so let's see if we can't break it down. So first of all, the beat is polyrhythmic, meaning that there are two different rhythms happening simultaneously.
What?
One of the rhythms comes from the hi-hat, where Bonham lays down steady triplets, opening and closing the hats for emphasis on certain notes. He complements this with ghost notes on the snare, notes that are barely audible and more meant to provide a feel to the song than anything
That is
else.
crazy.
Beneath this comes the second rhythm, where Bonzo plays a swung halftime shuffle on his bass and snare. As if the beat wasn't enough, the piano and guitar lines are playing in 12/8 time over the 4/4 beat. This gives a syncopated triplet feel to the song that's impossible not to get with. Let's give it a listen.
What is this going to sound like?
John Bonham
What's really cool to me is that, as complicated as it sounds when you delve deep into it, on the surface level, it's just pristine, pretty, beautiful. The song sounds really great to me. You wouldn't know even. It's like an iceberg almost. You're almost feeling or experiencing the very edge of this thing, where underneath is this giant, complicated, structural, masterpiece, you could even say.
was a truly one-of-a-kind drummer, and his steady foundation helped Led Zeppelin do incredible things musically. Even in this video, I've only begun to scratch the surface of what made him such a great drummer. So next time you're spinning Zeppelin, listen a little closer to the drum kit.
Okay, really cool video. I mean, I don't know what much else I can add other than the stuff that I spoke about in there, except to say that I thought their music was fantastic. I thought John Bonham was great without delving into this aspect of it, but to hear how rich it is musically, how complex it can get at times, especially that last track, that one-ton song, that's bonkers. Guitar, piano parts are doing something completely different, and the drums has two rhythmic sections to it, or what would be the word, speeds to it. Wow. They became over time, I think, a band that couldn't be denied musically. I think maybe at first people could have wrote them off as being like just bombastic and loud, but to see something like that proves to me that these are real musicians. Other than that, I'll catch you guys on the next video.